Welcome back to our deep dive into Beyond the Badge.
Uh,
Last time, we were talking about ethical leadership, and I'm curious to see how these principles play out in real life. I'm always a little wary of case studies. Sometimes they feel, I don't know, a little too perfect.
I get that. What if we think about these case studies not of like step-by-step instructions, but more like sources of inspiration? Like, how did these people take these core ideas and actually put them into practice?
Okay, yeah, I like that approach. So less about copying exactly what they did and more about understanding, like, their mindset.
Right.
So what kind of transitions are we talking about here?
Well, the first one is about a former security director for a huge multinational company who decided to get this launch a tech startup.
Well, wait, hold on. From security director to tech entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big leap. What was his aha moment?
He realized that there was a gap in the cybersecurity market. He saw that most companies were just reacting to breaches instead of trying to prevent them.
Okay.
He wanted to, like, flip the script and create a more proactive approach to security.
So he was applying that forward-thinking, future-focused mindset that we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
But starting a business is risky, even for someone with a lot of technical knowledge. Did he have to learn a whole new set of skills?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He had to learn about things like fundraising and marketing and building a team. Basically everything you need to know to run a business.
Wow.
But what's really interesting is that his background in security actually gave him a huge advantage.
Okay.
He understood cyber threats better than anyone, and that allowed him to create a really innovative platform.
So it challenges that idea that security professionals are just stuck in the technical stuff.
Right.
This guy was thinking big picture.
Exactly.
He was using his expertise to create something new.
And that leads us to our next case study, which is totally different. This one's about a senior security executive who stayed in the same company, but he moved into a strategic business advisor role.
Interesting. So instead of going off on his own, he found a way to use his skills within his company. What made him want to make that shift?
He'd been running global security operations for years,
Okay.
and he had this deep understanding of risk management. He started to see that those skills could be applied to all sorts of business challenges, not just security.
Yeah, because we tend to think of risk management as this very specific thing, but it's really about understanding potential threats and opportunities across the entire business.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this guy started to get involved in strategic planning
Right.
and improving operational efficiency, even analyzing market competition. He was using his security mindset to help the company make smarter decisions in all areas of the business.
So he became like an internal consultant,
Exactly.
offering a fresh perspective based on his security background.
Oh.
I'm wondering, did he face any pushback? Like people thinking, what's this security guy doing getting involved in our business?
There was some skepticism at first, but he was very strategic.
Okay.
He focused on building relationships, explaining his ideas clearly, and showing how his insights could benefit everyone.
He was using those communication skills that we talked about.
Right.
All right, what about case study number 3?
This one is really fascinating because it shows how security can actually drive positive change, even outside the typical scope of the role.
Okay.
This security leader became a champion for sustainability within her organization.
Wow, that's really cool. I never would have thought of those two areas as being connected.
Yeah.
How did she make that happen?
She saw the connections between security practices and broader sustainability goals. For example, she spearheaded energy-efficient security systems and reduced waste.
Okay.
She even started community programs focused on safety and environmental awareness.
So she wasn't just protecting buildings and data, she was also protecting the environment.
Right. And it goes back to that idea of ethical leadership.
Yeah.
She saw an opportunity to make a positive impact, and she went for it. She didn't wait for someone to tell her to do it.
I'm really impressed by how different these transitions are.
Yeah.
It shows that there isn't just one way to move from being a security expert to a business strategist.
That's a key takeaway from these examples, right? It's not about following a set formula. It's about recognizing your own skills and finding ways to use them in a business setting.
And it highlights the importance of being adaptable and willing to learn new things and stepping outside your comfort zone.
Absolutely. These people weren't afraid to take risks and try new things.
As interesting as these case studies are, I'm really curious to hear more about Carrasco's own journey. He's obviously lived this, so I want to learn more about the decisions and experiences that shaped his career.
Yeah, me too. And that's exactly what we'll be diving into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll follow his path from retail loss prevention all the way to becoming a successful consultant and author. Stay tuned, because we're about to get personal.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive into Beyond the Badge, and I'm really excited to unpack Ken Carrasco's personal story. We've talked about his ideas, we've seen how other people have used them, but now I want to know, like, how did he get here?
It's funny when you look at his career, it's not like a straight line up, you know?
Yeah.
It's more like a winding path with unexpected turns.
Right. Like, how do you go from catching shoplifters to running security for the Olympics?
Exactly. And I think what's really helpful is that his book isn't just theory, it comes from his own experiences, what worked, what didn't.
Okay, so rewind to the beginning. He starts out in retail loss prevention. I'm guessing that's not where he thought he'd end up.
Probably not, but it was his way into the security world. And it's interesting, even in that job, he was learning skills that would be useful later on.
Like, give me an example.
Well, think about it. In retail, you're watching people all the time, looking for anything suspicious, right? You're paying attention to details, noticing patterns. And you have to deal with conflict, like, if you catch someone stealing or if a customer is upset.
So he's building those observation skills, his communication skills, learning to stay calm in tough situations.
Right. Skills that are useful for any leader, not just in security.
And he didn't just stay in that job.
No. He was ambitious, always looking for ways to learn and move up. That's how he ended up in Silicon Valley, in the tech world.
Which is a whole different ballgame, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Totally different security challenges there.
Like what?
Cybersecurity, protecting intellectual property, all the risks that come with that fast-paced, constantly changing industry. And the culture is different, too.
So steep learning curve.
Definitely.
Did he have any mentors, people who helped him along the way?
He talks about networking, getting advice from people with more experience. He wasn't afraid to ask questions, to admit he didn't know everything.
That's important, especially when you're starting out in a new field.
Totally. And Carrasco is a great example of a lifelong learner. He didn't just rely on what he already knew. He kept learning new things.
And you see that in his career, he kept taking on bigger roles, eventually ending up at Cisco as a senior security executive.
Yeah, a big job.
At that level, he really had to step up his business skills.
Pressure. Managing budgets, making big decisions, linking security to the company's goals.
So putting those financial skills we talked about into practice, which is harder than it sounds.
Oh, yeah. But he didn't back down from those challenges. He even took extra training to improve his business knowledge.
Wow, dedicated.
Right. Most people would be happy to just, stay at that level, but he kept pushing himself.
It's inspiring. But, even with all that success, he didn't forget about the people side of things.
What do you mean?
Well, he talks about building relationships, being a mentor, creating a good work environment. He knew that success wasn't just about him. It was about everyone working together.
That's crucial, especially in security, which can be, kind of lonely field sometimes. He wanted to build a more supportive culture.
And that probably helped him when he decided to start his own company.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to leave a stable job and do that. What made him take that leap?
He wanted to make a bigger impact, to use his experience to help other businesses with security and risk management.
I get that. It's empowering to be your own boss.
And he hasn't stopped there. He's a popular speaker, an author, sharing his knowledge with others.
It's like he's come full circle, from learning from others to becoming a mentor himself.
Exactly. His story shows what you can do with hard work, adaptability, and a willingness to try new things. And it reminds us that there's no one right way to succeed.
Hearing about his journey, I keep thinking of that quote from his book. Beyond the Badge is not just a title, it's a call to action.
Yeah, it's powerful. It sums up everything we've been talking about.
Think bigger. Expand your skills. Use what you know about security to make a real difference. Security isn't just technical, it's strategic. It affects every part of a business.
And as things get more complex, more interconnected, the need for leaders who understand both security and business is only going to grow.
So if you're listening and you work in security, think about what you can learn from Ken Carrasco. Take on the challenge, become the leader you can be.
And remember, you never stop learning. You never stop growing.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Beyond the Badge. We hope you found it helpful, maybe even inspiring. Keep learning, keep growing, and we'll see you next time.